The two gentlemen at the center of the Starbucks racial controversy told their story on network TV this morning. They suggested that they were racially profiled when they failed to buy anything at the store and then refused to leave. The men were eventually arrested. So why isn't Starbucks, which is sympathetic to their story, releasing surveillance video from the store to back up their account? And should the employee fired for calling the police sue Starbucks for defamation of character, since she's now basically being tarred as a racist? Let's bring in two lawyers. It's a fun debate to take both sides of the issue. Attorney David Wall in Los Angeles believes that employee definitely could have a case, and attorney David Pietro in Fort Lauderdale disagrees. Let's go to David D. I love having two Davids on. Let's go to David D. Why is this a difficult defamation claim to make?
It's a very difficult defamation claim. It's all fun and games until the police show up. And then, unfortunately, under this circumstance, it was no longer fun and games. The reason why there is no defamation is Starbucks has done, presumably that's who she would sue for defamation, this manager, and they haven't said anything about her. They're actually in damage control and trying to save the reputation of their brand to such an extent that they're going to close 8,000 of their stores on Sunday, May 29th.
Yeah, right. But David, that doesn't go to the defamation. Okay, we have to keep the conversation really focused, because closing of the stores, as fascinating as that training I'm sure is going to be, is not relevant to the defamation claim. So let's kind of keep it really focused. You said they didn't say anything about her. This is what Howard Schultz said yesterday about the manager. Let's watch.
And I think you have to say, in looking at the tape, that she demonstrated her own level of unconscious bias. And in looking at the tape, you ask yourself whether or not that, in fact, was racial profiling. There's no doubt in my mind that the reason that they were called was because they were African American.
All right, David W. obviously did make a comment. Unless she had a pattern in practice of racist comments, racist activity, racially profiling people, being rude to disparately to whites, to blacks, to Latino, I'd take the case. I'd take the case any day. Go ahead.
Yeah. Howard Schultz, get out your checkbook, because what this manager did was follow company policy to a T, as spelled by their PIO, their spokesperson. When a non-customer comes in and uses the facilities, as these two men did, the bathroom, they are to be asked to leave. If they do not cooperate and they do not leave, law enforcement is to be contacted. That's exactly what she did. Law enforcement came. They asked these men to leave 3 times before they arrested those two men for trespass. This woman now has been tarred and feathered as a racist by Howard Schultz with no evidence that race had anything to do with it. She was fired, and you're correct. She has a great defamation lawsuit and a wrongful termination lawsuit. And worse than that, Laura, what message has Starbucks sent now to employees? That if you suspect something's going down or going wrong, you better not call 911, or else you'll be tarred and feathered as a racist, and you'll be fired. It's a horrible mess, but that woman, I'll tell you what, I'd take her lawsuit in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I was like, see something, don't say something. I mean, this is like, here's what Dante Robinson said on Good Morning America. He was one of the gentlemen who was at the Starbucks. Let's watch.
What do you say to some people who say rules are rules, that Starbucks has a policy, you violated that policy, the police asked you repeatedly to leave, and you didn't? How do you respond to people who say that?
What I say is I understand that. Rules are rules, but what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And that's in any situation, whether it's race involved, anything.
I'm not following the right is right, wrong is wrong, rules are rules. Yeah, I mean, Starbucks does have this policy, David DiPietro. And now, what does an employee at Starbucks do? I mean, you are in a difficult position, right? If you think the policy is you have to buy something, otherwise we can all just use Starbucks as our offices, I guess, and just be tech campers and sit there all day on our laptops. But it is a business, and they do have seats for paying customers. Is that now not allowed, or we can't enforce that rule because everyone's going to be afraid to do anything, I think, at this point?
Well, that's the culture that Starbucks has created. How many of us have met people at Starbucks for business reasons and maybe not ordered something? So I think Starbucks has sort of set this culture out there.
You don't have a right to go and use. I mean, you try to go over to Cafe Milano here. Let's take another example. Cafe Milano in D.C. bring a brown bag lunch. And you meet at lunch and you say, well, no, I don't want anything. I'm meeting someone here. He'll be here any moment. You just sit out and like put out your bologna sandwich and you get your little, milk and you sit there like, oh, no, I'm okay. I don't need anything. How long before you get thrown out of Milano?
Yeah, but what about a little diplomacy? Think about this. Did they need to be arrested? In order to be arrested, somebody has to say, the owner or the agent owner,
well, it was worse
I want them arrested.
It was worse than that.
They could have just had them kicked out. Next time, just have them.
Well, they asked them to leave and they wouldn't leave, right? Let's go through that.
But still, that somebody has to say, arrest them. If the owner has said, no, I just want them out, that's a much different scenario.
Laura, these men were cursing at the manager. They weren't just being quiet and shrugging their shoulders.
They were
cursing. But let's face this. Everything Starbucks does is put through a filter of political correctness first. Starbucks does not want picketing. They don't want protesting. They don't want the social justice warriors claiming it's a racist organization. They don't want any of that. So what they've done is they've thrown that manager under the bus, trashed her reputation, ruined her life, all in the interest of maintaining their corporate brand. And she's got a huge lawsuit, and I guarantee you that's going to be filed. And hey, God bless the lawyer that takes it, because he's going to be a rich man.
She might have signed a release. I bet you guys are we're all attorneys. I bet Starbucks, if I had to guess, don't you think they wrote her a check, made her sign a release, and said bye-bye? They got some smart lawyers at Starbucks.
Well,
but just like Stormy Daniels, you can void the non-disclosure. You can void it. They think they can do it with Stormy. Maybe they can do it here. All right, guys, we're out of time.
I don't think a jury in Philadelphia is going to give her anything.
Okay. Well, up next, we've got the